A common axiom is that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Another axiom is that we sweat in peace so that we don't bleed in war. Here at the Marine Corps Association, we fully understand both. That is why we offer through our professional development page on our website a comprehensive catalog of battle studies, tactical and ethical decision games, and war games to ensure that not only do we learn from the past, but we embrace the thoughts and decisions that influence the outcomes of some of the greatest actions of the Marine Corps. We have tools and techniques that will enhance both unit training as well as enable comprehensive self study. Check out all that the Marine Corps Association has to offer on our website. Go to mca-marines.org/professional development. That's mca-marines.org/professional development and get your reps and sets in. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners, thank you for joining us and your continued support. This week, we continue our Road to 250 segment, celebrating the Marine Corps' 250th birthday in 2025. Throughout the year, we'll feature stories and history from throughout the 250 years of the Marine Corps. These episodes will be nested within the MCA's overall Road to 250 campaign, where you will find featured articles in both the Gazette and Leatherneck highlighting events and battles within specific periods in Marine Corps history. The MCA also has a commemorative Road to 250 coin collection. These commemorative challenge coins can only be found through the MCA. Go to marineshop.net to order individual coins or email customer service at mca-marines.org to order the entire set or learn more. For May, we walk the Road to 250 with a Semper Cinema crossover. And we welcome our VP of Membership Marketing and Support, Michael Armstead, to try his hand at a movie review. William, Michael, and I have a great time breaking down the themes of the documentary Devil Dog, Hero Marines of World War I, which follows historian and honorary Marine Giles Langan and his passion for preserving the legacy of the Marines who fought at Belleau Wood. This is episode 192.
Hello, Scuttlebutt listeners. I am William, and we are here today with Vic.
Hey.
As well as MCA employee and Marine Corps extraordinaire, Michael Armistead. Mike, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Proud to serve.
And we are doing another episode of Semper Cinema for Marine Corps 250. We're now covering the content in relation to World War I. So we have plenty of stuff going on in both Gazette and Leatherneck that we need to check out. And today we're doing a film review of a documentary that is available on Amazon Prime titled Devil Dogs, Hero Marines of World War I. This is actually really unique in the sense that this is actually a French documentary that is available in English translation to those lazy Americans who are not out there to learn French. It is a roughly about 45 minutes, and it follows both the personal experiences of Marines who fought in World War I at the Battle of Belleau Wood, but also tracks the footsteps of a historian by the name of Giles Langan, who is a French national who became interested in studying the Battle of Belleau Wood, particularly the Marines who fought there at a young age. And it traces sort of his story of how he became a historian and preservationist, tour guide, and then on top of it, a honorary Marine, which is a very rare award given out to certain civilians. And it's even rare in the fact that he's one of the few foreign nationals to actually receive this award. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off as we usually do with our Semper Cinema. So Vic, and we'll start off with you. What's your Amazon review? 1 to 5 stars, and your thoughts.
I guess let me start with I liked it a lot. I thought that perspective was really interesting. The stars thing, I feel like the way that it works these days, if you don't give it 5 stars, you must have thought it sucked. But when I compare
not necessarily, nothing's perfect except for the films that we gave 5 stars and said were perfect. So.
Right. I guess on the scale, I would have given it I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5, which again, it's still very good, and especially for what it is. But because of what it is in comparison to other sort of long form journalism and and documentaries, and some that we've even done on here. I felt like, yeah, four is very good. I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, and it was a really unique perspective. But yeah, 4 out of 5.
All right, Michael.
I kind of agree with Vic on that, but I were preceded by I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, there aren't a lot of documentaries about Marines who fought in Belleau Wood. So, coming into this one, I wasn't sure what it was going to be about, and so I was pleasantly surprised from the perspective that it approached the battle. And so, you know, using that as sort of a gauge, I'd say 4 to 4.5 out of 5.
Right, awesome. So my perspective is I had to give it a 5 out of 5 because as a historian and preservationist and battlefield tour guide, it sort of gives me the reason to live. It's like it's not this isn't for nothing. You didn't study history instead of going to law school. Like you have like there's the stuff I'm doing has purpose in life. But on top of it, uh more seriously, I do like the parallel between linking the past to today and understanding that we like to view history in the macro, especially in the professional historians, but it's important not to get lost in the macro and get into the micro and understand that history is a series of personal stories and narratives. And I love just how portraying Americans going abroad and him Geese going about and studying about the battle, and then contrasting that with the actual letters and diary entries and stories that he collected and is able to attach with photographs and histories of individual Marines who fought there, and how you still get the story of Americans who fought at Belleau Wood, and we'll get into more a bit about that later. So
Yeah, I thought
next question.
there was a line in there that I thought was really profound. Where he was, now I'm paraphrasing, but basically that learning about these battles through the individual, like we tend to want to look at things at the macro level, and how impersonal that is, but you learn about the history of the battle through the individuals, and following that sort of narrative thread of, where did these people come from and how did they get here and what happened to them when they did. So I thought that was a really unique way of looking at things. And I think from, and maybe being, here at the Gazette, it is really easy to get stuck into this more analytical sort of perspective of war and of history, and that we do forget that these were individual people who had full lives, and each one had a very rich story to tell. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that it didn't focus on what did 3-5 do in the battle and what did 1-6 do in the battle. It was in a lot of ways storytelling at its finest. And I have to tell you, William, as uh, Gile was tromping through the forest, I had thoughts of you really, going through the battlefield of Manassas, and what a historian really gets from actually walking the ground of the battlefield, and the fact that that's in his backyard, and he had been doing it since what, the age of 9 or 12. I mean, it had
Nine,
a
yeah.
lot more meaning to him, than someone who may just be visiting it once out of 2 or 3 years.
Precisely, and the fact that he essentially devoted his life to telling not just like the story of World War I, but of particularly Americans in World War I. Where if you go to France, France is so embedded into World War I is so embedded into the French national identity. You cannot go to any town in France without a memorial in the center near the church or the town hall or courtyard, etc. And there will be a monument to World War I, no matter how big or how small. Every village, every town, every city has this. And the fact that he's going a different route and actually choosing to focus on Americans, particularly
Right.
the Marines who fought at Belleau Wood, is pretty intense.
The
So
that
sorry, Vic,
bar that
continue.
they go to, that he frequents, is that right there? Is that at Belleau Wood, or is that just sort of
Yeah,
like,
I believe so.
because
And
they show
I
all the
immediately
Marines go there on the commemoration day?
absolutely. If you go, when I went to Normandy, as I was mentioning before, there's tons of these little bars all over the place that are dedicated to like World War One, World War Two, etc. And I even messaged my dad like, "Hey, we gotta go to the 110th anniversary of Bellow Woods." Like, it looks like quite the treat. So,
Yeah.
uh, so my question to you is, both of you, we'll start off with Michael this time. Is who do you think this film was made for?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I had to think about that because I wasn't sure. I mean, the fact that it was in French initially led me to believe that it would be for a French audience, and kind of like what you said, the events of World War One are kind of embedded in the culture. But then, when it started to focus on the families, and then it followed him on his trip to Quantico and then to Ohio, it led me to believe that, hey, maybe it's a dual audience here. It's the French who live in the area, but it's also for families who still are seeking some type of connection to the battlefield, and the Marines, their family members that participated. And so granted, the translation had its shortcomings. I think Americans watching this, and particularly family members, would get a lot out of watching this documentary. So I guess to answer your question, both you know um, French citizens in the area, and then family members of Marines who actually fought in the battle.
What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I was gonna say, for the French to understand, uh, what it was, what I guess sort of America's relationship with France through these world wars, but more specifically, what it is the Marines did for the French, and the impacts in sort of their sacrifice, um, and how those sacrifices still resonate even today. Yeah, I thought it was meant more for like the French sort of um, casual historian, or people who are familiar with some of the events of World War One, but maybe don't know the specifics.
Interesting. So what I've noticed is, from I like Michael's assessment where it is actually, I believe I agree with you. It is made for an American and a French audience. For the French, but for it hits
Different
the
reasons.
palette different for each
Yeah.
audience. For the French, it is a large nation defining conflict of which the Americans played a small part in. And for Americans, it's up there with sort of one of the forgotten wars almost, because we came in the very end. And it was clearly overshadowed between World War II, which is very embedded in the American national identity, and then after the Civil War. So it's this major war, the largest war of the era, that we come in and play a relatively small role in. The number of veterans in comparison to other conflicts is smaller, uh, and so it's almost like yin and yang. It's like trying to for the French, trying to show how the Americans contribute within their greater national struggle, and for the Americans is to show what we did and bring light to how we contributed to a much larger war, a war that was beyond America, and almost forgotten in our scope and importance of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess, I think that there's definitely something there. My only pushback would be that for any documentary that deals with war and deals with the descendants of those who fought in them, you're going to get sort of those, at least from an American production. You're going to get the sort of really high drama, high emotion settings where the descendants are coming into contact with their deceased family members, and then you'll get that cutting onions moment, and then they talk about how impactful it was. And so that's why I felt like it was geared more towards the French because I thought that for the makers of the documentary, they wanted the French to see that for Americans, it still mattered that they had relatives that fought um, in France as they were, 50 miles outside of Paris. Vice, I guess it just seems that it's very almost cliche in the documentary stuff that you see from the American perspective. There's always sort of that like, oh, this is my great grandfather moment, and then they, hold hands and cry and stuff.
Yeah, but what I thought was interesting though is, the historian kind of, it was like almost an obsession for him, to look
Well,
for
he
these
talked about
items.
how he didn't have a family and
I
stuff
know,
because
right? I
that was
mean,
Yeah.
crazy.
it's
I was like,
like
oh, so that'd be
that
a
he gave
cautionary
that up
tale.
and had been doing it for what, 40 years? And just the lengths that he went through to reach out to, the one family member from Ohio where he just found the one dog tag and just it's like part of me was like, what is this guy's deal? Why is he so, you know, obsessed with, making those connections? And I think honestly, I think it played into how crucial he became to sort of helping bolster, the Marine historical culture in Belleau Wood, and probably led to the fact that he became an honorary Marine, which, William, you said, is just it's such a rare thing and such a um,
Well, he's
it's
only the
hard to get.
second foreigner.
Yeah, the other one I think was from Japan, which
Mhm.
that's probably a whole nother story in itself. That it wasn't families reaching out to him necessarily. It's just him, being dedicated to, telling the story of these Marines and then making that connection to hopefully fill some holes in a history that, like you said, William, is largely forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, the I get maybe I mean I get the obsession, maybe not to the extent that he does, because I mean I chose to go the family route and not maybe sell my soul, but just the idea that I mean that such a unique story that he lives nearby and is able to tread upon what him is mundane has such an important part of history that you dive into it. That I mean that I entirely sympathize
Yeah.
and
Well,
can
and
empathize with him on that.
well, he even talked about too, like, what, as he was starting his journey, his entryway into it wasn't that like some uh expert came down and took him under his wing and started to impart
Right,
all this great
right.
knowledge. It was like, yeah, my grandfather kind of knew that there were Americans here, and I had to do this book report when I was 9 years old, and so I just started diving into it, and then it was through his own sort of interest that then became a passion, and like you said, that he really started to latch on to this narrative thread because I think it is really compelling, that like and from what I understand, like, not only was it that the Americans came in, like, really at the 0 hour, but in some respects, like, the war was kinda coming to an end, right? Like, there was obviously, they were out 50 miles outside of Paris, so, I mean, it was still very fraught, but at the same time, the appetite for the war was waning in Europe, like, they were just so fed up with this constant stalemate, and so for Americans who in many ways didn't care, I'm sure for many folks there is a way of buying out too. But yeah, to come down to Quantico, jump on a ship, and then head out to France to go fight in a war that wasn't wildly. It wasn't like you said. It didn't have the zeitgeist of World War II. And which we had, as a country, had pushed against getting involved in for the majority of it. And
Right.
so I think it is very compelling to latch on to the story of, you know, an American 19-year-old who gets on a ship to go fight the Germans in
The
Belleau
Bush.
Wood. Yeah, the Bosch. Um,
Well, I love how you picked up on that, Vic, because I love how the film told the generic story that's been repeated throughout all of history. Is small town dude joins the Marine Corps, caught up in the passions of entry into the war in 1917, arrives in France at Saint Nazaire, greeted by with crowds of lovely people cheering for them, disembarks, and they're marching towards the front, and then they start seeing, uh, groups of refugees fleeing in carts, and then they get
Yeah.
closer, and then you start seeing wounded soldiers, vehicles, and you start hearing like the slow rumble of artillery in the background, and then you enter an entire just world of chaos that some guy from middle of nowhere Ohio is now in, the pinnacle of industrialization at its worst. And
Right.
then they're described. I mean, it's every, especially World War I is so unique that every preconception of war that a lot of people had going into it was thrown out the window, just by the rapid industrialization and technological advancements before and during, and just it just tells that story really well. I love how they matched it with the personal accounts, the diary entries, combined with the the film that they recovered from World War I, and then on top of it, showing just 100 years later, the terrain is still rugged, jagged. It's still wounded. It's still hurting from this conflict that was so intense that happened so long ago.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, you mentioned the personal accounts and the letters that he read, particularly from um, Lothar Long and Major Cole. One thing that struck me was that you really got the sense of a 19-year-old experiencing the shock of battle for the first time. We when we think of Belleau Wood, we think of the image of the Marine sticking the bayonet in the chest of the German machine gunner. But listening to those accounts, you get a really different perspective of what it was like for someone to, experience, coming out of the trench
Wait,
and going across the
sorry, we had
field.
a Michael, we had a quick glitch. Do you mind going back like 30 seconds?
Um, you know, we tend to think about the battle. We see the image of the Marine, stuffing a bayonet into the chest of a German machine gunner. But when you listen to those personal accounts, the letters from Major Cole and probably Lieutenant Long, you do get this different perspective of a 19 or 20-year-old experiencing battle for the first time, and it's not what you would typically think of as the sort of heroic follow me into the breach. It's like, holy cow, my friends are dropping around me, everything went black, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, it was just a different perspective, and a I guess yeah, it was just a different perspective from what we're used to reading about, the experience of Marines in Belleau Wood, and much more personal one. And actually, for me, that was more eye-watering than the families who were sort of reconnected with the battlefield where their loved ones were wounded or killed.
Yeah, I
How
thought it
do you?
was a
Sorry,
really
Vic.
in oh, go sorry.
No, you're
I
good.
thought
You're
it
good.
was in that was a very interesting aspect of it too, was, and I'm drawing a blank on the Marine that had his chin blown off, and then went back home, and they didn't even know, like,
Rankin,
who
I
he
think,
like, what
Sergeant
he did. Like,
Rankin.
he was such a small little dude, like, I was his TV repairman, which another antiquated
Right, right.
but yeah, so he was like, yeah, if I had known, I would have talked about it more. But anyways, I thought it was really interesting because from his account, all he did, like, he got there, got off ship, did, like you said, like, march to the front, and then was, like, taken out in the first wave. Like, he didn't, like, we think about the Marines, like you said, like that. I think was it Waterhouse that did that one or
Yeah,
whatever. But yeah, of that scene of the Marines taking, he never even saw, like, he saw Belleau Wood from the 400-meter advance through that open field. He never even made it actually into the woods.
right.
And so I thought that was really interesting. Like, the entirety of his combat experience probably lasted maybe 2 minutes. He was luckily enough that he wasn't killed by his wound. He didn't succumb to his wounds. But the horror of it is still something that was so horrific that he didn't even talk about it, in his own town didn't even know that he was a Marine that fought at
Yeah,
Belleau Wood.
yeah.
So it's kind of crazy.
So, have either of you been on a staff ride or battlefield visit to a Marine Corps related battlefield before, either during one of your schools or training or whatnot?
I haven't.
I
The
don't
only
think
ones
I
that I
have. It's been
yeah.
all Army stuff.
Hmm.
Okay, well, send me the names of your commanding officers so I can write them angry letters. I'm a taxpayer. I want my Marines going out and doing battle sites on a regular basis. Well, shoot, that kind of screws them next. But like, how about just in general? Maybe not necessarily where Marines fought, but like where Americans fought.
So, I mean, I think like most Marines, I've done Gettysburg 3 times and Antietam once, which are all local to this area, somewhat local to this area.
Mhm.
How about you, Vic?
When I was at Knox, Fort Knox, we did one that was right outside of Nashville, and I'm drawing a blank.
Stones River,
I'm sorry?
Stones River.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm
Is
drawing a
it south of
blank.
Nashville?
I'm sorry?
Is it south of
No, it was north. It was in closer to the Kentucky side of Tennessee.
Perryville?
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
Perryville, yeah.
So, what I guess what's it like? I mean, being members of the American Armed Forces. Do you have like a special link when you go to these places, or is it to you? Is it more academic?
So I went for school, so it was much, much more academic. And then we actually went from there into Nashville, and there's a minor league baseball team, and so we did a historical and then a modern. Basically, we did the battle study of the historic battle, and then we had to come up with our own courses of action for the taking of this minor league baseball stadium. So yeah, it was all very academic, and we didn't really sit in either one of those scenarios um, for any length of time because then we had to drive all the way back up to Kentucky. So yeah.
Yeah, mine were roughly academic as well. The one unique, if you want to even call it a battle study that I had was my second time at Gettysburg, where it was a bunch of public affairs officers, and we were pretending to be the public affairs officer for,
Mhm.
the opposing general officers who were participating in the battle, and what will we do to kind of communicate with the public about what was going on. So that was kind of a unique perspective. Uh,
How did I would hate to be a public affairs guy actually.
yeah, I can
This
tell you
is
it
a
was not.
public affairs nightmare.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, you're gonna get roasted on X over that.
Oh, absolutely. So, I
Out of curiosity, what was your public affairs response?
well, I mean, basically, we just went through different aspects of the battle, and talked about what we were trying to highlight, to your respective publics. So it really depends, as you know, on the course of the battle and what you wanted to portray. And then at the same time, we tried to add in a little like influence that might impact the other side. Um, but that was kind of the extent of it. And I would tell you it was kind of challenging for a lot of us because you really have to have an understanding of the battle itself to be able to do that. And it was just very much of a surface look at it from where we were, approaching it.
Interesting. Yeah, because it's generally speaking, what I do towards it's a mix of sort of just purely academic, and then sometimes I had one where it was I was at Cedar Mountain, and there's someone whose ancestor was actually killed there, and the ancestor who was likely buried, and so I was able to go through the official records, figure out where they fought,
Wow.
figure out where their unit was, and took them like, hey. in all likelihood, somewhere around here is your ancestor. And the story in the family is that he didn't know his wife was pregnant when he enlisted, and so it's just by pure happenstance that
Wow.
this guy he's alive today because of it.
That's
So
crazy.
and that I really was able to connect with the film just because giving people that sense of closure, even for a conflict that was 160 years ago, and then for Giles or he's sorry as a 100 years ago,
Yeah.
and that there are still family connections out there, and then I mean those are the types of people where like he was like yeah, I'm okay that I didn't go do STEM in college. History is just fun.
Well, I thought it was really cool. I mean, on that note, I thought it was really cool how I mean, he really was sort of a historic or a detective of history because he was going through and, I mean, the only name he could see really clearly on there was Joseph after he
Right.
cleans it up. And
Right.
it's like, well, so now he's like, well, this looks like it might be an O or a C, and then I think it ends in an R. And so he finds like the manifests, and then the unit rosters, and he's like on microfiche or whatever, and he's like going through and finding out whose name could have been Joseph E. and something that either starts with a C or an O and ends in an R. And yeah, he finds it on the manifest sheet. Um, so yeah, I thought that was really cool.
It did give this sort of, and I don't want to downplay it, but this CSI feel to it. It's like, hey, we're going to go back here. I believe this is what happened. At this point during the battle, I believe this is where you know um, your relative may have been during the point of the battle. I mean, I got so much out of just watching that piece of it, and bringing out the maps and showing this is where I believe the unit
Yeah.
was. This is where I believe, you know,
Well,
what
that
was
was
it?
what he
The
was saying too about what was it? The
Major
company
Cole.
commander or the
Yeah,
battalion commander was like, there's like no way like he had to have died trying to save somebody because if you're on the military crest of a hill and someone throws a grenade,
right.
you're not going to run over to it. You just jump out of the way. And so he's like, the fact that he was heading towards it means that he was trying to get it away from somebody else.
Right.
And it's. I mean, I don't think it's an insult to compare them anything to CSIS or CSI or whatever, just because I mean the extent of detail and research required to
Hmm.
do what he's doing is incredible. How did this change y'all's perception of the Anglo or sorry not Anglo sorry American French relationship? Because like that's the amount of effort that this one Frenchman and also the French people have put into preserving Belleau Wood. What are your thoughts on that?
I was actually pretty impressed by it. I mean, I know this was done in 2017, and I don't know if you're going to get into this, but that's very close to the anniversary of the battle, and certainly the 100th anniversary of the battle, and certainly 100th anniversary of our participation in the war. Um, it it really, I guess, bolstered my I don't even want to say if it's my confidence, but it made me feel really warm inside that the French still had this connection with us, despite sort of the anti-French sentiment at the beginning of I want to say, was it OIF, where there was freedom fries versus French fries, and all of
Yeah, I
that
forgot
nonsense
about
that was
freedom
going on.
fries.
Um, that hey, the Marine Corps and the U.S. military writ large really made a difference during the war, and were truly appreciated by the French people. So um, yeah, I guess it left me feeling good about the French-American relationship.
Yeah, cynicism, man, is my love language. So I can't ever
Mm.
like take something. I can't ever look at an optimistic side of it. I think that a lot of it has to do, but I do agree. I did appreciate the people that they did show and the level of appreciation, especially from Guy, um, the amount of dedication and loyalty he felt, and the camaraderie. But at the same time, like, their livelihoods depended. That bar, of course, they're gonna say good things about the Marine Corps because every year Marines come through there on the anniversary, man, and as you can see, like, the lines out the door. So I mean, they make their entire annual income on that one day. And so, but I think a lot of it has to do also with the proximity of the battlefield. Like, that dude had that COC, the house that was turned into their COC is still on his property. And even though it's dilapidated and falling apart, every day he walks out, he sees, dude, this is where, like, Marines got shelled and almost died and had to displace. And so the realities of that relationship, I think, are omnipresent for the people that are in there. And then I think, just almost like, as the as you get further and further away from the epicenter, probably a lot of that starts to water down and water down. And I mean, even though it's only 50 miles outside of Paris, I doubt you'd find the same sentiment, outside the Louvre that you would find, at that bar. So yeah, I really appreciated it, but I don't know if that's felt like, yeah, like, if you can really say, like, Americans and French are brothers, like,
Yeah.
there for sure. But
So do you think any of that would have been bolstered by, I mean, the subsequent support, the Americans had in pushing out the Germans in World War II? That you in some ways you can't really separate that.
sometimes sentiment lasts, as long as and I don't know. Yeah,
So
I don't.
I think Vic, you brought up a few great points. First of all, it's upon going to Normandy last year, man. It's all Paris. Is that we're all the bad stereotype that Americans and French have of each other. It's Parisians are just nasty, nasty people, as a whole.
The comments here are of the individual and do not reflect the
Not
opinions of
associated
the
with
Marine Corps
the.
Association,
Yeah.
Department of Defense. Yeah.
Obviously, there's lovely people in every city, but as a whole, I think the stereotype emanates from Paris because a lot of especially people go visit America, visit France from America are going to Paris. So there's like the
Yeah.
stereotypical tourism trope stereotype that we have in DC. You go in DC, you see tour groups from other countries are like, oh, those idiots who, they're talking really loud at the Korean Memorial. They're talking really loud at the Vietnam Memorial. Like, what are they doing? So yeah, I get it. So I guess, but I mean, obviously, I think Vic, cynicism is maybe a little appropriate. Yeah, obviously, there is money involved, but I mean, the senses I get is especially from your average French person outside of Paris is that, I mean, there's a genuine appreciation because again, World War One is part of their national identity, as is World War Two, and then the fact that Americans partook in both and would both help liberate either parts of France or all of France in those two conflicts. It's really remained a lot, and it's even more so than what we give the French credit for the Revolutionary War.
Mm.
It's almost like I find as an American that we've forgotten more of the French involvement in our national founding war that we are
Yeah.
so that is central to the American identity versus how the French have treated us in response. I think I might have to give them to this one on terms of genuineness and like genuineness and integrity and honoring the memory of Americans who fought over there. Uh, and I just talking to people over there, especially there I you can kind of obviously tell. Yes, it's like going to a battlefield in the States. If you go to Gettysburg, there's tons of gift shop places, but I think, they're genuinely happy that not genuinely happy, appreciative of the sacrifice that the soldiers had there. I think you can have both.
Yeah.
And this was a French documentarian that put this video together. Wasn't, a bunch of Americans getting together. Hey, let's
That's
talk about
true.
how,
That's true.
so, which, it'd be a question for you, William, or maybe you're going to ask us this, but, what do you think, why do you think the documentarian, the director did this movie? I mean,
So
it's
the hunter has become the hunted. Michael Arnold
well,
your first
Now
Semper
the student
Cinema, and you're
has
going
become
for
the
the
master.
throat. I love it. Asking that hard-hitting question I was literally about to ask y'all. So shoot, I'll go first. I usually go last. The first shall be last. Last shall be first. So essentially, what I'll take your question a little bit. It's like, what is the argument of the movie? What is the point that the director's trying to make in putting this film together? And I think that primary audience is French, secondary audience is American, but they're both the intended audience. I think the argument he's trying to make is that in this war that is so crucial to French identity, that he's making the case that victory would not have been possible without the American support, and he highlights on the Marines because of technically speaking, the Marines were not the first Americans to fight in France, but it was one of the
right,
first major battles that Americans fought as a whole unit. And there's a lot of obviously historical debate going on across every country about every facet of World War One. And one of the primary arguments that is fought over World War One by historians, armchair Joes, etc., is why did the Allies win? And there's different factors. And I think what the director's trying to do is highlight that this American participation was vital to French victory. He ups the stakes. They keep mentioning the Germans were 50 miles of Paris. If they got to
right,
Paris, who
right.
knows what could have happened? So he harps on that a bit, and so I think he's trying to demonstrate to the French people that we really needed American help, and here's a place where their help really mattered. And here's a Frenchman one of us. He's this guy is one of us who is so dedicated to giving credit where credit is due, whatever small or large credit you think the Americans are worth. But that victory in Europe for the Entente during the First World War was dependent upon American involvement, is what I would argue. And then he makes that big point by breaking it down and combining it with firsthand sources, going to the place and understanding just what America's relationship was within their nation defining war.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way, but on a different level. That there's definitely, like I said, I think the reason he made it was to sort of remind or to highlight to the French, to his fellow countrymen, that it's not just a government deciding to impose its will. It is, the war is the continuation of of politics, but that it's these individuals, for a French person, a foreigner from across the pond coming over here because it's the right thing to do, or it's because they wanted to defend France. And I think that they're really trying to drive that point home. And then, like you said, I mean, in particular, the Marines at Bella Wood, like he kept emphasizing too, that like the the Germans had turned this place into a fortress. Yeah, and then it continues. He says like probably 3 or 4 times. They were 50 miles outside of Paris. Um, and then all the refugees are women and children. And so I think they're just really trying to drive the point home that these Americans selflessly left the safety of their geographic location, came over here and sacrificed for us. And so I think that's why he's doing it, and then he focused on the Marines in particular because, like you said, it was. I mean, they lost what, 9,000? He said 9,000 Marines,
7,000.
7,000. So I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, Vic, I'll just dovetail off of what you said. I completely agree, and I think the way in which the director did it by using, this historian, self-taught historian, from his own area, and then really getting into or delving into the storytelling so that, you know, any Frenchman would hear the story and could relate in some form or fashion, with what that American Marine went through in defense of their nation. So,
I think the title also. I mean, it could be a rough translation between French and American, or sorry, English. Sorry, I speak American. I don't speak English. Between French and English, though, is Devil Dog. Devil Dogs, Hero Marines of World War One, and it's for a French film to say that it was these Marines who were heroes, of this great conflict, was very striking. So, well, I think I mean, Michael went slam dunk. Do y'all have any remaining thoughts you'd like to speak before we call it close?
Yeah, came in, the All-Star, called in the closer. You got Michael just closing it out, man.
Well, I have to say, I was a little surprised when you asked me to participate, because I am an avid listener of Semper Cinema, and I had just finished listening to The Gift, the one that you had just done, and I'm
Yeah,
like, holy cow! How am I going to top that? Because that was actually, a really good episode that you all did.
thanks.
So maybe next time, I'll come in a little sharper and.
Oh, man, you're a heavy hitter.
Love it.
This is
Love
great.
it. Well, thanks for listening, y'all. We really appreciate it. Devil Dogs, Hero Marines of World War One is available on Amazon Prime. You can rent it for $2.99 or buy it for $9.99. It's certainly worth your time. Certainly
Or
worth
get the
sharing.
subscription. You can watch it for free.
Per
I
week.
thought I had the subscription.
No, the subscription to the channel, whatever that.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
can subscribe to whatever channel. Also, I mean, Guise, however you pronounce his name as a stupid American, he does tours in France. He does tours in Wood. He is tons of Marine units go there, tons of individual Marines. Go check him out. Go check out his work. Go visit Wood. Fall in love with the French people. Stay away from Paris, just like the Germans did. And have a lovely
Not the
day.
second time.
The Marine Corps requires leaders of all ranks to have a deep understanding of war and the employment of force. MCDP 1 reminds Marines that the military profession is a thinking profession. Every Marine is expected to be a student of the art and science of war. It goes on to say that every Marine has an individual responsibility to study the profession of arms. Self-directed study in the art and science of war is at least equal in importance to maintaining physical condition and should receive at least equal time. The Marine Corps Association understands the critical importance of ensuring that Marines are as mentally ready for combat as they are physically ready. That is why we offer an entire page dedicated to wargaming on our website. We have recommendations for both tabletop board games as well as computer games. And for Marine Corps Association members, there is a discount code for War Game Design Studios that you can find on the website. War games are a great way to immerse yourself in history and to put yourself in the shoes of the great leaders of history. Go beyond guided instruction and experience the thrill of wargaming. Check us out at mca-marines.org/decision-making-exercises/wargaming-2. That's mca-marines.org/decision-making-exercises/wargaming-2. Take your training to the next level. Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Lichman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.